Hello and welcome to the Facts Over Fandom show. I am your host, Brandon Podgorski. Happy Friday. We usually record the show on Thursday and then publish it on Friday. Been a crazy week. We're getting to the end of the semester, so things been a little bit backed up. So I'm actually recording this on Friday morning. So I apologize that it's getting out just a little bit late on this Friday, but we made it. TGIF. We made it. It's Friday. It's spring. Golf is kicking into high gear with people. Baseball's been in play for about a month. So it is a beautiful time of year. And again, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much to everybody who's been listening or checking us out on YouTube. We've had some good numbers on there. So I'm a little surprised. I didn't know how that would work, putting this show up on YouTube, kind of more of an audio show than it is a visual show. I don't know if anybody wants to look at me for 30 minutes, but for those of you who are doing it, thank you so much. I truly appreciate everybody who's listening. For me, this is just a labor of love. This is just something I enjoy doing as a hobby. But if you are checking us out on audio, please listen to us on Spotify. Now, we're available on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon. Any of them are fantastic. But we really want to build up those Spotify numbers. Hopefully one day kind of monetize this show so I can make a little bit money back as I continue this going forward. But that's not what's important. This show isn't about the money. This is just me doing something I love and talking sports and finding a topic that hopefully is topical and giving you a little bit more explanation about it and teaching you a little bit something about kind of that intersection of sport, business, and culture that I like to talk about. So again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. Not going to be a lot of visuals today. The past few shows, there have been some visuals. Today, not as much. But, we are going to talk about Division III, the largest division in the NCAA. In NCAA, you've got Division I, you've got II, you've got III. I want to talk about Division III today for a number of reasons. Last week was D3 week, where we celebrate all things Division III. And I've worked in Division III for 8 years as a coach and faculty member, worked in small college athletics for even longer than that. Wow, going on 15 years now I think about it. So small college athletics, especially D3, kind of near and dear to my heart. But first, before we jump into that today, please follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, at FOF_show. You can listen to the show, like I said, Spotify. That's where I prefer you to listen, but we're available on Apple, Amazon, Google. You can also check us out on YouTube and Rumble. I've synced this up to Rumble. I know that's kind of another kind of big emerging platform. So the more that we can get the word out about Facts Over Fandom, the better. And again, I kind of want this to be our show. I know that I'm going to be the one who comes up with the topics, but let me know. What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you want to see changed? Anything you want me to add? Even if you're just like, Brandon, go away, you stink. That's cool too. Let me know that you're listening. Comment if you're on YouTube or Rumble. Comment if you're checking us out on social media. Be sure to like and share and comment on our stuff. And actually, no, if you think I stink, don't say anything. Mom said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So let's be friendly with each other. So 5-star reviews, that's all we want. Give us likes. Say nice things. If you got bad things to say, I don't know, go listen to somebody else. Who am I? I got like an audience of 25 people. You can certainly go, I don't know, listen to Barstool. Those guys got audience of millions. So they must be doing something right. All right, so let's jump into our topic today. We're talking about NCAA Division III. And like I said, it is the largest division in the NCAA. Now, we've got a couple umbrella organizations that oversee college athletics. We've got the NCAA, got NAIA, and we've got NJCAA for JUCO for 2-year schools. But NCAA is the biggest and is probably the most well-known, and we have Division I, II, and III. The thing that's unique with Division III as compared to Division I and II, and you may know this, you may not know this, at the Division III level, you cannot give athletic aid. So you cannot give athletic scholarships at the D3 level. So if you hear somebody tell you that, I go to so-and-so D3 school and they're giving me an athletic scholarship. No, that's not true. You are not getting money to play sport at a D3. That is against the rules and regulations for Division III. What schools can do is they can give you maybe academic money. They can give you other types of grants and aid to help you through school, maybe like some type of presidential award or some type of dean's award, a chair's award, or whatever. Maybe they can even discount your tuition a little bit, but you cannot get specific athletic aid to play at D3. And so I think sometimes people hear that and they kind of denigrate D3 a little bit, or kind of, make it feel that, okay, it's college athletics, but it's not really college athletics. It's not big time. And no, I'm not going to sit here and say, D3 is on the same level as Alabama football, right? Or Kansas basketball, or whatever else in between. But what I will tell you is that, only about 6% of high school athletes go on to play college athletics. So, you're looking at some of the top high school players in the nation playing at the D3 level. And especially when these athletes have the ability to go to D3 and continue to hone their skills and get better year over year, we're seeing grad transfers go from D3 to D1. Now, again, I'm not saying that, every D3 player was just overlooked and they should be playing D1. I'm not saying that. The vast majority of these players are at this level because this is the level that they should be at. This is where their skill set lands. But what I am saying is that this is still high level athletics. And there are some of those students who, could probably go play at the D2 or maybe even low major D1 level, but they came to D3 for different reasons. And students tend to come to a D3 for different reasons other than just athletics. And we're going to walk through that today and kind of find out why a student athlete might want to come to a D3 and may not want to go to a D2, maybe a D1, an NAIA school, where they can actually get some athletic aid. So a little bit about my background in D3, and sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. I think it's just because it's Friday and kind of getting to the end of the semester, and everything feels like falling apart right now. So excuse me as I kind of have to take some kind of extra sips here, but I coached at D3 for a couple of years, where I got my start in college athletics, at least in coaching. Was coaching assistant basketball coach at a D3 here in Indiana. Amazing experience. The school I worked at is just an amazing school. I would put it on the same level as, it's going to sound crazy, but I'd put it similar to some of the Ivies that we see. If you think about a small, private, very rigorous liberal arts college here in the Midwest, where a lot of their graduates go on to high level jobs, where lawyers, doctors, CEOs, just a lot of high net worth type of jobs. Obviously not as well known as the Ivies, and might not have kind of that allure, but it was a very academically rigorous college. And so that's where I got my first start with Division III. And I had a couple job offers, and both of them, the schools were just outstanding. And I'd heard about them living in Indiana. I'd heard about them, but I didn't know a lot about them until I actually had the opportunity to go and interview and then finally work at one. And just the academic portion that's pushed at these schools, because they understand students are coming to these schools because they want to go and get jobs, and they want to be pushed. And these are high level students for the most part going to these D3 schools. Now it depends on the institution as well, but for the most part, D3s are really focusing on that academic side of things and not so much the athletic side. Now the athletic side is important, and these students and these coaches, they want to win just as bad as your D1 or pros or anything. They still want to win, but the time demands are different. In D3, I believe you got 20 hours a week in your season. Now, if you're a fall sport, you can have a little bit of a spring season. If you're a spring sport, you can have a little bit of a fall season. But it's not at kind of like the Division I or even Division II level, where you can be with your team basically year round, just at different hour amounts depending on the where it falls in the calendar. So the athletic demands are not as rigorous as they are at a D1. And the academic demands, just as rigorous as a D1, but there's a little bit more emphasis on that academic portion, because again, these athletes, they understand hey, I'm not going pro. The last game I play here at my D3 is going to be my last game I ever play. I need to take these 4 years, work as hard as I can on the athletic field, and try to win as much as I can. But I also got to start getting ready for a job. So I coached for a couple years, and now the past 6 years, I've worked as a faculty member, as a professor at a D3. So I've gotten to see both sides of it, and they're just special places. And again, that's not to say that D1s aren't, or NAIAs aren't, or D2s are. Every institution is unique. I just really, really, really enjoy the D3 model, because even if we look at D1, only about 1% of these scholarship athletes are going to play pro. So if you're a Division I athlete, and we're talking about all sports, right, in Division I, if you're a Division I athlete, you better be getting ready for your career. And that's something I tell my students when they come in to meet with me for advising, especially their freshman year. I'm like, hey, listen, go work as hard as you can. Go win a national championship. I will be there in the stands, and I'm going to be cheering for you. But you've got 4 years to set yourself up for the next 60. And if you've make it to 20 years old, you're probably going to live into your 80s, is what the statistics bear out, just because, lifespans, I think the lifespan here in the United States, mid 70s, late 70s, but that also includes, child mortality. So if you get to your 20s, we're living out into our 80s. So what are you going to do in these 4 years to get yourself ready for the next 60? If all you do is just focus on your sport, you don't network, you don't get experience, you don't do internships, you don't get to know your professors, you don't do any of that, and then you graduate, how are you going to get a job? How are you going to advance in your career? You're already 4 years behind your peers. So that's what I think is unique about the D3 level. I really, really, really enjoy being at this level here. So some things I want to tell you about D3, and just some facts that you may not have known. Division III, like I said, it's the largest division in the NCAA. It has over 440 institutions with almost 200,000 athletes. Huge number, right? So almost 200,000 athletes just at D3. That's a lot of student athletes. And they offer all the same sports that you can get at D1 and D2. On average, student athletes comprise 25% of the student body at D3 institutions. Now, good and bad with this. Okay? Good, hey, students are getting an opportunity to go to college and be a college athlete. Fantastic. I love it. Yay, rah, go team fight. The bad that can come with that, though, sometimes schools, especially small schools, they use athletics as a driver for enrollment. Now, that inherently doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but sometimes schools will, hey, we've got to bring in 100 football players a year to help with our enrollment. Well, what are we doing once they get there to actually keep them engaged and try to help with our retention? Because you can only play so many guys on a football or baseball or basketball or whatever sport. You can only play so many people. And I've worked at schools, and I'm not saying my current school is guilty, but I've worked at schools, especially small schools, where they use athletics as a driver for enrollment. And what we find is freshmen come in, they're really excited. And then to get on the field, there's 3 or 4 people already ahead of them. And they could just see at the light of the tunnel, because coach has to bring in, another huge recruiting class year after year after year. Coaches are almost kind of glorified admissions reps that I'm never going to play. And so that can be frustrating, especially, a lot of D3s are private. I'd say probably the majority of them are private. So you're spending, 30 some odd $1,000 a year just for the chance to hopefully get on the field at some point. That never happens. You can see it's never going to happen. Well, why am I doing this? I could go to a state school, probably closer to home, spend half and get the same degree. So D3s, small schools, it's really incumbent on them to put in more programming. What can we do to add more value to the students? And it's something that I'm very proud of where we work. Where I work now, we do recruit a lot of student athletes, but across the board at all our schools where I work, we have a lot of programming. We really push things like internships, co-ops, networking, clubs, and organizations. We really, really try to push that because we understand that these students, yeah, they're coming here to play a sport, but they're also coming here to get career ready. And I think that's what, as we see right now with schools kind of shuttering across the country, if you're not investing into your students and investing into their future, you've got a hard path ahead of you. Okay, 19 is the average number of sports that D3 school sponsors. That's a huge number of sport, a lot of opportunities for women as well at the D3 level. D3 student athletes, they got a graduation rate approximately 5% higher than the overall student body. So here's the good thing about athletics. So I said using athletics as a driver sometimes might not be the best idea, or sometimes can have some unintended consequences. Let me put it that way. However, what we do find is when students are part of a team, they're more likely to be ingrained in the school. They've got a good social support system. They got coaches who can help them, and they are more likely to graduate than the student who's not a student athlete. D3 student athletes report significantly greater gains in time management when compared with the student body. And you have to. And I know it's in vogue, and I get it to a certain extent that this generation might be a little bit softer, or what do college kids have to worry about? They're just out here having fun and at school and all that. The one thing I would say to hopefully kind of educate people is that college athletes are under a lot of stressors, and maybe stressors that people don't necessarily appreciate or understand. Because not only do you have the stress of your sport, now they're not as well covered sports, obviously at the D1 level where you're on national TV and regional TV. However, they take their sport seriously. They put a lot of time and effort involved in that. The academic demands at these schools can be pretty rigorous. You usually have internships and co-ops or other things that you have to complete as well. You might be away from home, and you want to try to have time for your family. You want to have time for friends. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of clubs and organizations, a lot going on campus that these students want to get involved in. But at the same time, they got commitments with their sport. So there's a lot of unique stressors that student athletes go through, especially at the college level, that not even pro athletes have to deal with. And pro athletes at that level, it's work. It's not just play, but it's actual work. But they're getting compensated for it. And they got a little bit more, I would say, the opportunity for some more unstructured downtime than college students. So, if you're going to be a student athlete, I don't care what level at, you have got to learn some time management skills. How do I make sure I get my academic commitments completed, my athletic commitments completed? And at the same time, if you're a college student, you have got to have some fun. And that looks different for everybody, right? Fun for some college students. Maybe I'm getting involved in campus ministry, and I'm going to Bible studies, and I'm going to worships, and I'm doing that. That's fun. I love it. All aboard. For some college students, that means I want to maybe get into Greek life and be social, and I enjoy the partying and whatever. Hey, in moderation, you're being safe. Good for you, right? So you want to make sure you got a little bit of a balance with that. And in student athletes, you got to learn really, really early on. And that's why I think freshmen coming in and playing a fall sport, it's really difficult for them to make that transition. You've got to find a way to manage your time. And it could just be as simple. I'm going to grab my phone. It's grabbing one of these little bad boys right here as you look at my phone, and just using that calendar function to help with that. All right, D3 student athletes, they report greater involvement in volunteering. Again, that's another thing that I've seen a lot at D3s. At D1s, there's a huge time commitment with your sport. There's a lot of pressure there to win, and I understand that. So a lot of that time is going to be geared towards what are we doing to getting better in winning. D3, not as many hours, and the calendar is more conducive to allowing teams to kind of do some of those team bonding experiences outside of the season, where they're able to give back, and in the season as well, but certainly outside of the season where they're able to give back. D3 student athletes are more likely to report that they see themselves as part of the campus community. Again, bigger schools, and we've seen this in actual research, that student athletes at D1s kind of feel separated from the campus, or separated from the student body. Some of them live in kind of separate buildings or quarters from some of the other students. You spend so much time with your team. You go to class, and then it's practice or training or film or nutrition, athletic trainers, right? Chiropractors, massage, whatever it is that you're doing, right? And you don't have that opportunity to get involved with the clubs and organizations as much as you might at a smaller college. The season and eligibility standards, they minimize conflicts between athletics and academics, allowing student athletes to focus on their academic programs and the achievement of a degree. I've talked about that. And 75% of D3 student athletes receive some form of grant or non-athletic scholarship. So 3 out of 4 D3 student athletes, if you want to go to the small college route, the D3 route, you're probably going to get some type of financial aid. So some of these institutions, they are pretty expensive. And I've done some research on this I'm going to share here in a little bit. But they could cost you $30, $40, $50, up to $80,000 a year. Again, there's things that go along with that, though, because some of these academic requirements are a little bit more rigorous, but they provide a lot of opportunity for you. So, if you want to be an engineer and you want to get a great engineering education, there's some school like an MIT, which is a D3. You go to MIT, you get your degree, you're going to have a job, but you're going to be paying $80,000 a year to go there as well. So schools understand this. The great thing about these schools is that the alumni are so passionate and have such a deep connection to the school that the endowments for some of these schools are pretty flush. So there's a lot of scholarship opportunities if you want to go to D3 that are non-athletic, that are academic. So one of my best pieces of advice is if you're thinking about being a student athlete, especially at the D3 level, get good grades. Grades go far in helping you get academic aid at these schools. Right. So one thing I wanted to also point out here. So when I got my MBA a few years ago, I did my big research, my capstone class, looking at Division III and looking at athletics as that driver of enrollment for Division III, but also providing some opportunities to keep these students there, to help with retention as well. And I made the argument that athletics could be one of the best marketing vehicles for your institution at specifically the D3 level. And I looked at 31 different institutions across the country from coast to coast, and 30 out of 31, as I looked at how much does it cost for each student to go there? How much does it cost the school as far as like feeding them and housing them and educating them? And how much does each student bring in? Is there a net positive? Do they get net positive revenue from those students? And 30 out of the 31, they all showed net positive revenue, which meant, the more student athletes we recruit, the more positive revenue that we bring in. The only one that didn't was a very, very expensive college out on the East Coast. However, they have a significantly huge endowment, which they're able to tap into. So if you're a small college, investing into an athletic program can result in great gains as far as increasing enrollment, helping with retention, and bringing in more revenue. And as we see in colleges across the country, it's a scary time right now because there's some things working against schools. One would be that the birth rate is decreasing. And so that pool of students who are traditional college students, from 18 to 24, is decreasing. So you've got the same number of schools fighting for the same amount of students. 2, online options are everywhere and they're plentiful. You do not have to leave your house to get a college degree. And you can get it on your time for a whole lot less money than going to a campus. Right? And then, another one, if we think about coming out of COVID, what happens when the next pandemic hits and schools have to shut down? So there's some things out there kind of in the environment right now that are working against schools. So you've got to be proactive in thinking about what can we do to increase enrollment, increase revenue, and keep these students retained. And I think athletics is a great thing to invest in. So something I wanted to read to you is from my capstone paper from a few years ago, kind of looking at this. And I did this, I think, in 2021. So we were kind of at the height of COVID at that point. One of the most recent studies of the front door phenomenon. So one of the things, and I've talked about this in a past show, how athletics acts as the front door, the front porch of a university. right? Where it's, people think about the university, they inevitably think of the athletic department, and that kind of acts as that front porch to get them in to the door there. So looking specifically at D3, as compared to students at D1, the scores for public evaluation, interconnection of self, sense of interdependence, and behavior involvement with sport teams were much higher at the D3 level than D1. This may seem surprising since major D1 athletic programs receive much more media coverage and fan support spread out across the nation, but the intimate nature of small school athletics may result in a bonding effect on the student body. This may be due to the close social settings, classes, and living arrangements that student athletes have with the student body as a whole. So what I talked about earlier. Interestingly, student athlete identification with their sport actually decreased after their third semester on campus, but their attachment to the university grew even stronger. And anecdotally, I see that all the time where students come, they understand, hey, I'm the fourth, fifth, sixth guy on the bench. I'm never going to play. I want to start getting involved in other things on campus. And their identity as an athlete starts to decrease, and they start to kind of have a stronger connection with the school. Okay? So this may be due in part to student athletes becoming more involved in other activities outside their sport, such as Greek life, service organizations, and clubs. As opposed to D1 student athletes, the NCAA greatly limits the amount of time that D3 student athletes can spend in their sport during their off seasons, which allow these student athletes to become the campus fabric. This can be an advantage for D3 non-athletic scholarship schools, since D1 student athletes report that they could feel stuck by their scholarship. And we've seen this in the scholarly research as well, where scholarship athletes, they may have perceived that the removal of athletic scholarships would lower their capacity to have choices, as their academic experiences would then become their responsibility, resulting in their autonomy being limited. So interesting research on that. They also report on that full athletic scholarships can exert control, like coaches can exert control over their scholarship athletes' behavior, and they can also be perceived as potential controller of non-scholarship athletes' behaviors, like walk-on, rather than the method that can provide incentives for an athlete's effort and performance. So we're going to continue here. As we look at D3 universities from the 2003 to 2004 school year through the 2014 to 2015 school year, we found that most have a robust athletic program, and it's associated with more applicants per existing undergraduate. Having a robust athletics program with a high share of undergraduates engaged in it is successful advertising. So talking about that front porch of the university there. So that's my defense of D3. Yes, it's not D1. And no, these students are not most likely going to play pro. Now, there's always kind of exceptions to that rule there. But the competition is high. These student athletes are some of the best high school players in the nation that are coming to college. And the best part is they're coming to school, they're getting their degree, and they're going on to have amazing jobs, amazing lives, and they give back to their school. So if you're a student athlete, you're a high school student athlete, and you're listening to this and you're weighing, hey, do I go to a D3 and have the possibility to play all 4 years, or do I try to walk on at a D1 and maybe see the floor on senior night? I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm not going to make a hard sales pitch. You've got to do what's best for you. But think long and hard about D3, and don't just think about these next 4 years. Think about the next 60 they're going to be coming up. All right, so that's my defense for D3. Let's stay tuned for the next segment as I look at this week's dream job. Okay, it is time for this week's dream job. And this is a segment we do every week where we look at a dream job in sport. And what I like to do with this, especially as a sport management professor, is one of my passions is giving back and mentoring students and helping them find what their dream job would be. So I've gone through a few different websites these past 5 episodes, this being episode 6 already, and looked at jobs in sport and things that, hey, look at these job boards here. This is where they're posted. These are some of the things that are available to you. These are the skills you need and all that. I told you in the opening, I want you to comment. What do you want to see in this show on YouTube and Rumble, hitting us up on social media, Instagram and Twitter at FOF_show, and just telling us what you want to see and what you want to hear on the show. So this is going to be one of the last dream job segments that we do. We'll look at it from time to time going forward, but going forward, I got a new segment that I want to try that I think is going to be a lot of fun that I think people are going to enjoy. But until then, let me share this week's dream job with you. And I am sharing this from Indeed. Now, I don't believe Indeed is the best place to find jobs in sport, but it is a tool that you can use, and you should get as many tools in your tool belt as you can get to find sports. So, what I did for this job here, I just typed in sports, and we've looked at the Midwest, we looked at the East, we've looked out in the Southwest, we've looked at a few different areas here in the country. And I thought, well, let's look south. Let's look in Florida and let's see what's going on in Florida. Now, what I would suggest if you're using Indeed, try to be very specific with your job search. So if you just type in sports, you're going to get a ton of hits that might not have a whole lot to do with sport, because maybe they're looking for, they could have used the word sports in there. Maybe they're looking for a salesperson for, let's say, pharmaceuticals, and they're looking for somebody who's sports minded, right? Because they're looking for somebody competitive. So you got to be a little bit careful. So I would be specific. So if you want to get into like sports broadcasting, right, I would type that in there. So be specific on what it is you want to do and where you want to work. So I put in sports, but just to be broad and put in Florida. And this one came up. I've got a lot of students who want to work kind of in operations, as I put that in scare quotes. It's not a scary job. It's a demanding job and a lot of fun. Doesn't pay all that great, but operations just means, the reason I put it in quotes is it can encompass a ton of stuff. Do you want to be the person who's in charge of equipment? Do you want to be the person who's in charge of facilities? Do you want to be in charge of game day management? Operations is just an umbrella term for, dozens different jobs in the sport arena. But this one here came up, Assistant Director, Athletic Equipment Operations at the U. Now, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just swagger or whatever, but I have always had a soft spot for the U in my heart. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. That's when their football program was rolling. I loved the U. And again, I think it's just that swagger that they had about them. So if I had the opportunity to go back as a young man and work at the University of Miami, I think I probably would have jumped at it. But I'm very, very happy with my career where I'm at now. But as we're looking at this, enough about me. Assistant Director, Athletic Equipment Operations. You're going to be responsible for the day-to-day operations of the Olympic equipment room, including the management of equipment room functions for assigned sports, budgeting, inventory, audit, and reconciliation of Adidas accounts. So what these big sporting wear manufacturers, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, they enter into agreements with schools. And I think we're all probably familiar with that. And, they'll pay these schools millions of dollars every year. I think Nike has the biggest contract. I think I'm thinking about the top five. I think Nike with Michigan is number one. UCLA is up there. Louisville's up there. Texas is up there. And I think maybe Notre Dame. I think those might be the top five. I'm trying to remember from what I taught in class. But they pay these schools, millions, upwards of tens of millions of dollars to wear their gear. Now, you might think, well, why would Nike or why would Adidas, let's stick with Miami, why would Adidas pay Miami to wear their stuff? Why isn't Miami paying for that? Well, Adidas understands if people are seeing Adidas attached to Miami, fans are going to buy Miami gear. And with Adidas being one of the exclusive licensors or licensees of the University of Miami and their athletic program. When people are buying Miami gear, they're buying Adidas gear. So for them, it's marketing. I mean, this is just a marketing thing for them. And as such, they're going to pay them to be an Adidas school, and they're going to give them product. And it's not just the uniforms that you see. There's a famous, you could go look it up on YouTube. It's about maybe a minute and a half long clip of one of the equipment managers at Clemson. And he's just putting down all the stuff that their football players get with the different jerseys and the different helmets and the gloves and the socks and the travel kits and the shirts and the hoodies and the socks, the shoes, not just football cleats, but sneakers and the slip-on slidey shoes and all the stuff that they get from the bowl games and all that stuff. And so you can see just everything these players get. So the school's getting money, they're getting gear, the players are wearing it, and in turn, they hope that fans actually buy it. So you're going to be responsible. Let's look at this here in the bold. You are responsible for monitoring all aspects of equipment operations. So you're going to make sure the players and the coaches are outfitted anytime they need something. It's there, it's available. You got to keep track of inventory. So, hey, we're running a little bit low on cleats here. We got to make sure we've got them in stock, because if we don't have them and a player needs them, we're probably going to hear about it from the coach. So you've got to be really forward thinking, very organized. And not only are you dealing with one sport, but you're dealing with all the sports at the University of Miami. So you're also doing this, and you're doing it in accordance with NCAA and ACC rules for intercollegiate athletics. Duties involve the coordination of equipment operations and maintenance of athletic equipment, and the development of budget recommendations for equipment maintenance and personnel support. You, the incumbent, you negotiate contracts with athletic vendors frequently, make decisions by exercising discretion and independent judgment. So there's a whole long list, maybe not exhaustive, but it's pretty long, of duties and responsibilities. If you want to check it out, go to Indeed, check it out. If you're interested, the qualifications for that, you need to have a bachelor's degree in a related field, so like a sport management type of a field, in 1 year of experience, or an equivalent combination of education and experience. So if you don't have a degree in sport management or something, or facility management, it's okay as long as you've got some experience. You have to be certified by the Athletic Equipment Managers Association, AEMA, or have the ability to obtain certification within 12 months of employment. So what I would tell you, if you see that, you're like, oh man, I'm not certified, they're not going to hire me, why would I even apply? Apply, because they're giving you an out. If you've got great experience, I'm assuming if you're kind of local to Miami, certainly, and you've got the ability to work long hours and do what it takes to do this job, what they're saying here is that, hey, if you get it within a year of employment, you pass the exam, then we will hire you, right? So don't be dissuaded by that. You've got to possess strong organizational skills and attention to detail, and computer proficiency required, especially with Microsoft Office Suite. So as you're putting together your resume for a job like this, make sure you put your education and your experience. What experience do you have that, as I scroll back up to, where you can show management of equipment room functions for assigned sports? Maybe you were a high school coach and you were responsible for the practice gear and the game day gear, and making sure all students had what they needed with the proper sizes, and working with a vendor like a BSN Sport and ordering everything and staying within a budget, and you're doing laundry. Put that on there. Give a thorough explanation of everything you've done, even if it wasn't at the college level, but you're interested in this job and you've had some of this experience. Make sure you put it on there. I was a college basketball coach for 6 years, something like that, right? And part of my responsibilities was keeping track of all our inventory for our equipment, making sure the equipment was in proper shape, not just for what we used, but also in the facility, because we had portable goals, kind of like stanchions like you see in the NBA, doing the laundry. So even though I don't necessarily have a title as equipment manager, if I was applying for this job, I would certainly hammer that a whole lot harder than I would our win-loss record, right? So look at those qualifications, speak to them in your resume, and your resume should not be one size fits all. Your resume needs to be specific to the job you're applying for. Look at what they're asking, look at the responsibilities, hit on those, in your resume. So important. If you do that and you don't have any grammatical errors and your formatting looks correct, already your resume is going up into the top half. I promise you. And then, you know, hopefully you get an interview and then you crush it from there. So if you're interested in athletic operations, check that out at the University of Miami. And even though I didn't go to the U, I do hope that one day they come back, because college football is just a lot better when Miami's good. So that's going to do it for this week. I think I already got next week's topic ready to go. I want to talk about recruiting as we start to get into kind of the summer recruiting seasons and what that looks like at the different levels, kind of piggybacking on what we talked about today. So I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next Friday. Remember, love God, love each other. Be a good sport. I'll see you later.